All right, I'm going to be talking about Lady Anna, chapters 25 to 36. That's installment 7. So there are 12 installments, so we're a little more than halfway. And as Dominic says, we are at very key chapters. It just so happens. I called it The Lady Ought to Marry the Tailor. I take my title from a series of exclamations Trollope probably wrote to Mary Holmes, ex-governess to Thackeray's daughters, with whom, according to Richard Mullen, one of Trollope's many biographers, Trollope corresponded for many years and wrote about his works with an intensity few others saw. Trollope's Lady Anna, published 1873, is a novel that apparently upset its first readership, at least as recorded in readers' familiar letters and published reviews. Many objected to what Trollope said was the very reason he wrote the book. Here he is telling a correspondent, Lady Wood, about its origination and conclusion. Of course, the girl has to marry the tailor. It is very dreadful, but there was no other way. The story was originated in my mind as to whether she ought to be true to her troth or to her heritage, and I determined that in such case she ought to be true all through. To make the discrepancy as great as possible, I made the girl an earl's daughter and the betrothed a tailor. I volunteered to take the penultimate, means second to last set of chapters of Lady Anna the novel, without realizing that in these we reach an explicit core of the story's personal matter plainly discussed, even eloquently, first by Daniel Thwaite in his letter of appeal to Anna, that's chapter 25, which alas she is prevented from reading, and then by Anna in her honest letter to the young Earl of Lovell, chapter 27. These two letters contain crucial statements of their emotional states of mind, set in truthful autobiographical context as they see them. Put forward as what is fueling their stubborn stance, they are a kind of Romeo and Juliet who fall into one another's arms on the rare occasions they come into personal contact. We have that at the end of these chapters. They refuse to obey the hierarchical values motivating their relatives, friends, and lawyers who want to prevent the match as unthinkable, much less doable. The Lovells and their team of lawyers want Lady Anna to marry the young Earl of Lovell and argue as an earl's daughter she cannot marry a tailor. Her mother, Josephine Murray, is traumatized by the idea of such a match. She's been fighting all her life to be recognized as the earl's legitimate wife. Her chief attorney, Sergeant Bluestone, a man who does not like to compromise and can grow angry, as it is at this point against any compromise. Given their childhood spent growing up together, their shared vulnerable statuses, and their long-term relationship, to Daniel and Anna, their rank at birth, while certainly mattering, is of secondary importance. Daniel Thwaite's evident sincerity and generosity in his letter leads Bluestone, again the attorney for the Countess, to concede Thwaite's is a fine, manly letter. Thwaite first tells Anna her mother is wrong to say Anna cannot marry him. Once she is 21, nothing in law or their religion can prevent them from marrying. Nonetheless, Daniel offers to release Anna from her vows, despite years of loyal attachment to one another, if what her mother says is so, that she now freely prefers Lord Lovell, that it was only ties of gratitude that kept her insisting she must fulfill her promise to marry him. Daniel declares he loves her in his heart of hearts, and has done so through years of poverty, against denigration of her and her mother as fakes and liars. He reminds the reader of the letter he has defended her in every turn. Trollope, as omniscient narrator, contextualizes this document by vividly picturing Daniel as forlornly in front of a door to Keppel Street, where he believes the Countess and her daughter reside, and finds just one servant who can barely be made to come to the door to take his letter. For her part, in her letter to the young Earl Lovell, asking him to desist, Anna confesses to painful self and social revelations about herself. She ought not to be writing this letter. Daniel is today a tailor, for which he is told he is unacceptable, because his father and he spent their income and savings to defend her and her mother in court, and to support them in a decent middle-class way. She's being asked to break a real emotional bond, as well as a promise to behave wrongly to Daniel Thwaite, and Daniel Thwaite himself is mischaracterized hostilely. The trigger of the situation is the Earl will inherit only the title. He is so poor he has to leave his horses with his uncle, the Rector Lovell. She may well be unfit to associate with the Earl now, which idea he projected when he was horrified to be told by her that she and Daniel are engaged. But as the Earl's acknowledged biological daughter, she inherits the Lovell family fortune. If in his letter Daniel is prepared to be all generosity, Anna is all candor in hers. Lovell's letter in reply to Anna's, pace next, still chapter 27, shows him explicitly not recognizing the validity of all she has said about herself and Daniel when it comes to marriage. He accuses her of not daring to say, which he just didn't think to say, that the working class Daniel is unfit to be her husband. Instead of a physical picture of the letter's writer at the moment of delivery, Trollope now provides her most immediate thought upon perusing Lovell's words. She simply says aloud or to herself what she had omitted. But I do dare. Why should I not dare? Why should I not love him now when I was not ashamed to love him before? Sandwiched between these three letters is a chapter where we find an account of a conversation between Daniel and the Keswick poet, Robert Southey, once one of the famous radical romantic poets of the 1790s, where to Daniel's deep dismay, Southey asserts Anna's presumed rank at birth places her infinitely above him. A tailor is just too low. This from a man whom Daniel, as a boy and young man, Daniel is self-educated to a high cultural level, has so looked up to as a mentor. Southey reinterprets the qualifiers he had written so long ago, and then turns to argue on very different kinds of grounds, in keeping with Trollope's disillusioned romance and social realism in other of his novels, that love for someone cannot last unless accompanied by social acceptance of that person by other people, and by enough money to provide respectability and comfort for the family that a marriage will create. Southey says Lady Anna will not be able to escape the values most people around her are now imposing on her and Daniel, and will continue to impose, and she will become dissatisfied and he resentful of how she might then see him. Trollope has for the moment shown clearly the central political, social, and psychological debate. He pushes aside the surface arguments of law and evidence relevant in a trial. Who is married to who, when, arguments over probabilities. Here laid out before us is a pellucid discussion of opposed values and outlooks in the context of personal feelings. Lovell opens his letter by asserting he has no interest in keeping Daniel Thwaite from Anna, and the writers' personal histories and their identities at stake, before Trollope proceeds to dramatize the court proceeding, which is chapter 28, Lovell versus Murray, and another. We are about also to experience the proceeding from the perceptions and exacerbated feelings of Daniel Thwaite. That's chapter 29, Daniel Thwaite alone. He remains unnamed. He is the other. He has had trouble getting admittance to the courtroom when he is one of the principals. He stands alone, listening to his role in the proceedings ignored. It's as if somehow he doesn't exist, certainly doesn't count. In the novel, Daniel is sometimes a surrogate for Trollope, as was the Jewish and therefore unacceptable Anton Trendelson, A.T., in Trollope's novel set in Prague, Nina Balatka, as the previously ostracized and derided Anna is also sometimes a Trollope surrogate. She corresponds to the impoverished Christian Nina Balatka herself. Nina is betrothed to a Jew and accused by him and others of lying and hiding important papers. Like Anton, then, who distrusts Nina, Daniel's impulse, since he is already more than a little embittered by what we call prejudiced, bigoted behavior towards him, is to distrust Anna. How could she hold out against this array of upper-class world's power and prestige? He has behaved openly and fairly, and the Lovells, Countess, and all their lawyers have been hard and unjust and bad to him. Trollope, ever there as narrator, moves to correct Daniel's angry and hurt musing as one-sided, as forgetting all the just and important civic functions these titled, property, and educated men perform. All this interiority, epistolary and meditative, becomes a preface to the various lawyers' reasonings in the court proceeding, especially that of a leading counselor to the young Earl, Sir William Paterson, Q.C. And that's chapters 30 and 31, justice is to be done, and the verdict. Trollope pauses his story to explain the book's first unconclusive climax, that verdict. We go over all that has happened presented as court evidence. So for our discussion's sake, it's time to place this week's chapters in the plot design of the novel as a whole, where in the storyline the back and forth episodes have occurred. The opening 4 chapters of the novel, installment 1, dramatized and meditated a sardonically Gothic tale. It occurred in Cumberland, a rural landscape, with the old Earl Lovell, a villain equivalent to a Lovelace, the rapist in an 18th century novelist, Samuel Richardson's famous epistolary romance, Clarissa, which Trollope knew well enough to write a very informative review on the Victorian abridgment. The Earl may also be meant to recall the diabolic Montoni and Radcliffe's scary Udolpho. He has tricked, so he claims gleefully, Josephine Murray into believing he has legitimately married her. Now she's pregnant, and he offers to take her to Italy as his mistress. Devastated. She had married him because she wanted a title as well as wealth. She pleads with him to marry her. When he scorns and mocks her, she leaves him and takes shelter for many years with a Thomas Thwaite, kindly a politically radical tailor, and his son Daniel. All go to court, for which the Thwaites pay, where the Earl is acquitted of bigamy. So Josephine perhaps really is an Earl's wife. But her title remains dubious. She is not accepted partly because of who she has turned to. There was no one else. There was no one else. The Earl returns and exhibits yet more defiant, wild behavior, including open adultery with another Italian woman, until at the end of close of chapter 2, the Earl dies. He lives a will. A distant male lover will get the title, but all else remains insufficiently validated and contested by others. By chapter 5, installment 2, two teams of lawyers have emerged. One headed by Sir William, fighting for the young girl's right to the legacy. As Sir William sees it, one obstacle is the court decision that the Earl could not be convicted of bigamy. The other for the putative Countess, headed by Sergeant Bluestone. The Lovels need money. The Countess craves recognition, seared as her mind has been by the shaming she and her daughter have known. Then, astoundingly to most concerned, Sir William proposes a compromise. Let the two young Lovels wed, and title and money will go into one shared purse and one new legitimate family. He is intervening with the actual events in these people's lives. It's the right thing to do, he says. Later, he will deny the engagement between Daniel and Anna is a disgrace. Anyway, Mr. Frick, solicitor, part of Sir William's Lovell team, had discovered in Italy that it's impossible to discover whether the old Earl was married in Italy before he wed Josephine Murray. Seemingly, all the other lawyers are horrified by the number of taboos Sir William must enact to engineer this felicitous outcome, and that's installment 3, chapter 9. It isn't law. As we listen to these debates, differing opinions on what legal game to play, get to know something of the nuances in the lawyers' personalities, their rank, place in life, with whom and where they reside, all of which help to determine what each proposes, we naturally begin to wonder, what is this novel about? In an essay called The Ethics of High Expectations, in an issue of the South Carolina Law Review, Jean Galbraith makes a strong case for Lady Anna as about legal ethics, with Sir William as its hero. It's the high-ranking, much-respected Sir William who takes us through the intricacies of what occurred, and if there is anything trustworthy in what documents or testimonies they are left with. Sir William means to suggest the young Earl should drop the lawsuit, that the Countess is undoubtedly legally married, and they must enact his proposed compromise. This is not allowed by the judge until all the arguments and skein of evidence are gone over. What is ambiguously produced is the verdict and solution Sir William has said they should agree to, so as to stop further litigation. So, is this a novel to be placed alongside Orley Farm? Or does it radically expose trials as places where not truth, but some outcome everybody can agree to, whether just or not just? For example, at the end of Trollope's first novel, The McDermotts of Ballycloran, our hero Thady is hung, though many know he did not commit premeditated murder. But wait, the trigger of the law case, what everybody acknowledges is important, why the young Earl seeks to replace Daniel Thwaite, is the young Earl's lack of money. Understanding this motive, Anna has proposed to share her legacy with the Earl, which we gather, except for her mother's protest against her marrying Thwaite, might just content everyone. This week's remarkable chapters also bring out that Daniel is due £9,000. Upon learning this, it is Sir William's turn to be astounded and say he would never have conducted the court proceeding the way he did had he known this huge amount. That's in chapter 33. Daniel Thwaite receives his money. The worst mistakes, it seems, that Goff, for the Countess, commits is when he offers Daniel a £400 annuity. Daniel becomes livid at the contempt Daniel assumes Goff has for him. Has he, Daniel, ever shown himself to be so base? Another low or mean moment occurs in this chapter when the rector Lovell, thinking the Earl will now get nothing, asks to be paid for stabling the Earl's horses. The deeper question the rector is asking his nephew is, how does he, as a relatively penniless Earl, plan to provide for his way of life? So is this another of Trollope's novels intended to show us, as Trollope put it in An Eye for an Eye, how great and terrible is the power of money? I've already alluded to the Gothic opening of the novel, chapters 1 to 2. The narrator's opening lines declare this is the story of the hardest, fiercest cruelty to which a woman, Josephine Murray, was ever subjected by a depraved predator. Those are not two strong words. In terms of plot design, the opening of the book and its long, drawn-out, close centering on the Countess, perhaps the book's most destroyed character, whether she's tragic or a pathetic misfit, or more objectively simply obsessively mad, I'd say it's feminist or female Gothic, as the subgenre is sometimes called. Among Lady Anna's last explanations for her adamantine refusal of her mother is that she will become her mother's slave if she marries Earl Lovell. The Countess Lovell shocks everyone by asserting then she would prefer her daughter to die than marry a tailor. What could be more like a modern woman than Anna, wanting to own herself, wanting to make her own identity? These chapters end with chapter 36. It's still true. When Anna asserts to Daniel she loves him still. But given Daniel's statements about Anna's money, she must be wholly dependent on him. I cannot say I think her willingness to follow him literally across the earth argues there's anything feminist here. I first read the book with a listserv community in the later 1990s, and from their comments, it emerged as dramatizing common social, sexual, and familial experiences, which leave sensitive people with long-lasting, painful, and easily irritated memories. Among the motives for Anna's refusal of Lovell early on is the Lovells are not comfortable around her. Like her mother, she doesn't fit in anywhere. The two women put me in mind of Trollope's profound portrait of Roger Scatcherd from Dr. Thorne, originally a stonemason, now a fabulously wealthy bridge and railway baron who lends people large sums of money but doesn't fit in anywhere and is an alcoholic. This is in Dr. Thorne. Lady Anna's story has a parallel with Thorne's bastard niece, Mary. Like Anna, who was perhaps illegitimate, but also an heiress. Mary tells her uncle near the end of Dr. Thorne, "Uncle, you must bear the misery of having to provide for me, bonnets and all. We are in the same boat, and you shan't turn me overboard." Dr. Thorne, "But if I were to die, what would you do then?" Mary, "And if I were to die, what would you do?" People must be bound together. They must depend on each other. Using the grandiose vocabulary P.D. Edwards uses in his survey of all Trollope's fictions, I would put it, are Mary and Anna champions of their sex and the sanctity of human relationships? P.D. Edwards' perspective on Lady Anna turns it into an uncomfortable but characteristic Trollopian masterpiece. Those who speak most highly of the book said it in a political context, and it's illuminating how it is not dated. Just change a few terms. Substitute race prejudice for class and rank, and there you are. In Kincaid's great book, The Novels of Anthony Trollope, far from an anomaly, Lady Anna is situated politically with a group of less well-known variations in irony between the two popular series, the Barsetshire and Palliser novels. What I find intriguing about the book is its resemblance to Rachel Ray, which is about religious prejudice in class, which George Eliot described thus: "I am much struck at Rachel with the skill with which you have organized thoroughly natural everyday incidents into a strictly related, well-proportioned whole, natty and complete as a nut on its stem. Such construction is among those subtleties of art which can hardly be appreciated except by those who have striven after the same result with conscious failure." All the different, far-reaching, and feelingful, deep themes I've summarized are in Lady Anna exquisitely woven together to the point that they continually morph into one another. The book's ending can accommodate an attempted murder, for which no one will be prosecuted, but one person vanished from the social order. That's a tragedy. A kind of exile for our central couple as a good compromise for them. That's kind of a comedy. And a highly theatrical melodrama with a veneer of everyday reconciliation between all but the self-destroying, embittered countess. That's the end of the paper or talk. I then thought of some questions for people to think about. Number one, what makes us enjoy a novel? Or perhaps I should say, what do you or anyone think of when that question is raised? Did you find Lady Anna enjoyable? At the time, people complained about its radicalism. Do you think its politics was what made people reject it? It was Sadler, by the way, who discovered it didn't sell well. Two, is one of your criteria likable characters? Is there anyone in this book that you can bond with or like? Aunt Lovell, for example. I happened to be reading the opening of Dr. Thorne at the same time. Because famous for its supposedly opening tedious chapters and Trollope's tedious apology. I tell you, I find them marvelously entertaining, as Trollope immersed me in these people's hidden past. In comparison, my view is Lady Anna is obsessively almost one note. Trollope's narrator and Dr. Thorne uses an array of wry, ironic tones, subtle and inimitable. A third question point of view. Is this a book which asks the question, is integrity achievable in our fallen world? Here, think about the choice Sir William makes. Think about how does law function in the book? Who can it help? Should the Lovell family regard Sir William as someone who did not look out for the best solution for their client, even if the final settlement satisfied many? And then my fourth one, thinking along feminist lines, was Mrs. Bluestone justified in her seemingly mild but incessantly coercive behavior to Anna? Thank you for listening. It's a better book than you think as you start to think about it. Okay.